Konnichiwa. Today we're going to talk about one of the most important subjects in Japanese structure. In fact, this is the other half of Japanese structure. We've referred to it on many occasions. You can't really do very much Japanese without it. But we've never tackled it head-on, and that's what we're going to do now. What we're going to talk about is topic-comment structure. And this is just as important as logical subject-predicate, A car, B engine structure. In my book, Unlocking Japanese, I referred to Ga as the king of Japanese and Wa as the queen of Japanese. Ga is the head of the logical particles, the logical side of the language. Wa is the head of non-logical particles and strategies, the non-logical side of the language. And we can go so far as to say that not only does every Japanese sentence have a ga marked A car, whether we can see it or not, every Japanese sentence also has a wa marked topic, whether we can see it or not. So what is a topic? Every language has topics. Most languages are not like Japanese topic prominent. But to explain what a topic is in English, here's a very quick example. In English, we track topics by using pronouns, and that's why English uses so many pronouns. That's why it's saying it all the time. So we can say, I had a ball, it rolled down the hill, it reached the bottom, it was a red ball. As you see, each time the ball is marked by it. And you might say that what's being tracked here is the subject, because it was the ball that rolled down the hill, it was the ball that reached the bottom, it was the ball that was red. But we could also say, I had a ball, I dropped it, it rolled down the hill. When it reached the bottom, Sakura picked it up and walked away with it. Now, you see, the first it is the object of my dropping it, I dropped it. The second and third it rolled down the hill, it reached the bottom. In those two, the ball is the subject, and then Sakura picks it up, and it's become the object again, the object this time, Sakura's action. So it is not tracking the subject, it's not tracking the object, it's tracking the topic, the thing we're talking about. That's what a topic is. And as I said, Japanese always has a topic, even though we can't always see it. So if we say America jin desu, usually we would map that out as zero ga America jin desu. I am an American, but to be completely thorough, we would have to map it as zero ga America jin desu. That is, I am the topic, I am the subject, and I'm an American. We don't have to go through all that every time, but it's important to know that it exists. When the topic and the subject are the same, it's not so important, but as we know, they often aren't. And in Japanese, much more than in English, they very often aren't. So in sentences like, kohi ga suki da, atama ga itai, onaka ga suita, krepu ga tabetai, all of these are complete logical sentences. Coffee is likable, head hurts, stomach is empty, crepes are eat wanted. In each case, we have an A car, we have a B engine, we have a complete logical clause. But while it's logically complete, it isn't grammatically complete without understanding that there is also an invisible wa marked topic. Zero wa kohi ga suki da, zero wa atama ga itai, zero wa onaka ga suita, zero wa krepu ga tabetai. In relation to me, coffee is likable, pleasing. In relation to me, head hurts. In relation to me, stomach is empty. In relation to me, crepes are eat want-inducing. And while, as with the zero ga marked pronoun, the default is I, but it doesn't have to be I, so the wa marked zero pronoun, the same applies. For example, if we look at a tall person go by and we say, sei ga takai ne, literally back is high, isn't it? And that's the way we say someone is tall. But as you see, this isn't complete without the wa marked zero pronoun, zero wa segatakai, in relation to that person. Back is to. And because Japanese has so many constructions that don't center on an ego, as we talked about in one of our previous videos, so many constructions in which neither the A car nor the B engine are in fact the person concerned, like all the examples we've just talked about, it's very necessary in lots of cases that we understand that the wa marked topic is there. And the other thing we need to understand about topic comment structure is that the comment is always a complete logical clause. The topic is usually a noun, it could be something else, but the comment is always and must always be a complete logical clause. This is something the textbooks don't explain, and it may be a good thing that they don't explain it, because if they did, I think we know how they'd go about it. They'd present this as some kind of strange oriental rule that we have to memorize, but that's not what it is. It's a logical necessity. As we know, every sentence, every logical clause must have an A car and a B engine, a subject and a predicate. And as we know from our third lesson on wa can never mark either the A car or the B engine or any other element of a logical sentence. It can only mark the non-logical topic. So that means that if we're going to have a sentence at all, both its elements have to be outside of the topic. We have to have a topic, we also have to have an A car, we also have to have a B engine. Therefore, every topic comment sentence only has two elements, the topic and the comment. Both the elements of the logical clause have to be in the comment. Therefore, logically, in a topic comment sentence, the comment is always a logical clause. In another video, I talked, and I'm going to talk again, about some of the implications of what is called the choice between wa and ga, what it means when we mark something with wa, what it means when we mark it with ga. And there are a lot of implications involved here. I won't go into them in this video, but you can watch the other one, and I'll put a card up for that. But the thing to remember here, because we're talking about the actual structure, is that when people talk about the choice between wa and ga, it's confusing and somewhat misleading because it implies that wa and ga are somewhat similar, that they do a similar kind of job, and we know that they don't. We know that they're absolutely different species of particle. And what we know from this lesson is that what we're actually doing when we're making a choice between wa and ga is that we're choosing which of two elements which are always present to make visible. Whether we make the wa visible, the ga visible, or neither visible. So we can say America人です. We can say 私はアメリカ人です. And we can say 私がアメリカ人です. And each of those has a slightly different implication. But we're not actually choosing between wa and ga. What we're choosing to do is to emphasize, by making it visible, the topic nature of the subject, or the subject nature of the topic, or neither. And which of those we choose to emphasize has big implications for what we're saying and what we're implying. And as I say, I've already talked about that, and I'll be talking more about that later. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments below, and I will answer as usual. I'd like to thank my gold Kokeshi patrons who make these videos possible, and all my patrons and supporters on Patreon and everywhere. And I'd like to thank you for attending this lesson. これからもよろしくお願いします. Class dismissed.